Hi folks, Puffin here with your Antifa news, or Antifa news for the Safari MAGA set, if you're one of those. But it is today, April 10th, 2021. It's 3 a.m. I must feel lonely. Actually, I'm not lonely because I'm here with you and you're here with me. So thank you for watching. And welcome to everyone watching. It's Antifa news, but of course, everyone is Antifa. Pro tip. Secretly Antifa. If you don't know that you're anti-fascist on the surface, you're Antifa at heart. And likewise, all news, there's an Antifa side of all news. I usually wear the Antifa party hat for good news, but I realized, every day we're getting further away from the Trump era is good news for getting rid of fascism. Of course, there's still a lot to get rid of, so stay tuned, but it's always good news. There's always some good news to be found in getting rid of fascism, and so that's Antifa news. All good news for all good people. And the news today, or some recent news, it is good news on some sad news that Joe Biden, President Joe, has decided to pay for people's coronavirus funerals. So to let people know, because I've heard that once on one news source and from no other ones. I think I heard it on NPR radio. And so maybe it's well known, but just in case, I wanted to report it here that he's picking up the bill for people's funerals. So it's sad news, but good news financially for people who've had to suffer financial losses, in addition to the ultimate loss of a family member. So nice to at least be reimbursing people for their funeral costs. Unfortunately, to me, it's a sad symbol of America that your previous president helps kill over 500,000 Americans so far, and then you get a new president who is better but is paying for the funeral costs, which is good. It's a good thing. I'm not complaining about that. And it's just kind of like, well, gosh, if we could go back in time, or if we could have had a good president when this started, and probably even been a better president than we have. If we could have had Bernie or something, if we had a good enough president to just socialize things, to just nationalize things, to have a national response that really targeted stopping the virus, we could have stopped this a long time ago. And the big irony is, well, it's kind of an irony. Trump really was trying to spread the virus as much as possible, which is why I call it the Trump virus. And I think in the future, people will know it as the Trump virus. But he was spreading it as much as possible for various reasons, including I think he was trying to kill as many of us as possible because he's that type of traitor and terrorist. But also, one stated purpose was trying to push the economy back to open up the economy again. And it's just cost you so much more in the long run. Here you are, the government's going to pay the debts of the funerals, and it's taking longer to open up, and people are less satisfied with opening up. So that kind of leads into two other news stories. One of them is unemployment, that managers, just a news story from yesterday, managers aren't able to hire people for jobs. And at least Fox was reporting they had somebody, they didn't even identify who he was, what type of expert he was supposed to be. But Fox had somebody saying, it's because the unemployment benefits are too good, that, if you can take away the unemployment benefits, then people will go back to work. Well, yeah, but the unemployment benefits are what's, keeping people alive and keeping anything going right now. And it's kind of like, because people have gotten used to that over a year, you're basically going to have to do that. Like UBI is going to have to become a thing kind of by default. And it's a good idea to just give everybody some money up front. And then people can work on top of that to supplement that. But a basic income just to help everybody survive. It's a good idea just to continue that, not have to qualify for it or anything. And maybe people with less would get more. That's a good idea too. But people have plenty who maybe don't really need anything, and that type of qualification. But no, none of these hoops and jumps to jump through, which is another story of today, that there's verification in 18 states by a third party that used to verify military IDs. It started off just selling military things like a Groupon website. Now has access to 18 states worth of, and millions of people, but 18 states worth of people's personal information. And I'm not presenting this like a security threat because I imagine they're a secure company, but it's just kind of a strange thing that I think it's appropriate to protest against, like presenting ID for voting, because we have a secure enough voting system. We know there's not really fraud in it. So it's, just racist and prejudiced and prohibitionist to prohibitive to make people show ID to vote. Well, they're making people show ID for unemployment benefits, which it just seems like shouldn't it already be their job to know that these are real people? Now, I know that there's been a lot of fraud and there's a lot of, fake people, people who have deceased who are on the unemployment benefits and getting checks, maybe not, from doing it themselves, but somebody using their identity. So identity thieves using, scamming the unemployment system. So you want to do something about that. It just, to me, seems like instead of having a third party, which I've heard we pay, our state pays maybe $3 per person to that third party to verify. So they're getting, $3 million or however many millions of people have to do it. And so, and that's just from one state. So this is all kind of like, well, isn't this already your job to have figured this out? Or if we spent this money in the first place, if we solved these problems on the front end, not had a bunch of fraudulent accounts in your system, then you wouldn't have to spend this money to clean it up. Now, again, this money going back and forth, another recent news story, because, it's nice for Joe Biden to pay for people's funerals, but people did have to pay for that at the time and have suffered, consequences from having to incur those expenses at the time. In addition to the tragedy of loss of life and the real tragedy that it could have been preventable. But nice of them to pay it. But it's like that's money that was harder on the people. Receiving it is a nice gesture, but of course it doesn't compensate for the loss of life, but it doesn't really even compensate for the loss of money, because the money was lost, in a time of hardship when, people are waiting for stimulus checks that really rich politicians were, bandying about instead of, getting out to people. It's the same thing that on NPR, they had a great show on 1A that had some progressive DAs, elected district attorneys, city attorneys, who were progressive and wanted to, change the way the system was run, or investigate prosecutions for racial bias, all sorts of good things to start rooting out racism from within the system. And they made a great point that, incarcerating someone costs $30,000 a year to put one person in prison on average, probably more, a lot more in some places, in some states. But $30,000 a year to incarcerate one person. And if you could give that money to families in advance, $30,000 to a family a year would help things so much that it would definitely help people stay out of lives of crime or things that get involved in going to jail and prison in the first place. Likewise with the foster care system. So I used to work in the foster care system, and there's so many kids who come into the system basically because their families are poor. They have problems in their household for being, associated with being poor. And then the state will pay another family, $1,500 a month or something to take care of this kid. Well, if you could somehow identify these families that are struggling and give them this money or this amount of services or something beforehand, and really nothing wrong with just giving people money and like making people's lives easier when you've made them this hard for so long. So that's, socialism for you. Like, that's why we need it. That's why it would be good. And we're learning that lesson through this pandemic. This whole thing about everybody's benefit is interconnected. Well, yes. And so one of our greatest focuses as a government, as a society, as cultures, as churches, what have you, is to get the least of these, the people who are disadvantaged and in difficult situations, some types of help to get out of it. So UBI is one good idea. Universal healthcare is, necessary, not just a good idea, but we're seeing how necessary it is through the way this is all shaking out. And they're just shooting themselves in the foot. It's like if you look at government like a human body, and some people like to think that, government is, all corrupt and so far away from humanity and to many, from the people. And in many cases, it's true, especially in America, even in America, or especially in America, it's become so far removed from the people, even though the government is supposed to be of and for the people. But I still believe that you can look at the government as connected to the people, as far removed as many of them are, and need to be brought back in touch with the people. It's still, one body with like a head and the long arm of the law shooting itself in the foot all the time. If the people are the feet, the long arm of the law keeps intentionally shooting the people in the foot. And that's a whole nother subject, but part of the same subject. And we're shooting ourselves in the foot in metaphorical ways too. Unfortunately, literally shooting people, cops shooting people is a literal problem, daily and terrible problem, like an epidemic problem in America, just as epidemic as terrorist and random shooter people, mass shooting people. It's a problem, and we need to address it like a problem, like a pandemic, like a disease, because it is. And it's this disease of racism and privilege and authoritarianism and fascism, which is why you're watching Antifa News. Thank you. But shooting yourself in the foot with all of this stuff, if you could go back, or if you could apply the money, the benefit, the aid, the assistance early, you wouldn't have to come in later. And that's what all these things have in common. And then one other kind of parallel story to this about the money early and then money coming back is the Trump campaign. People would donate to the Trump campaign, and then unknown to them, their donation was made into a recurring donation. So I saw this on, I think, Jimmy Kimmel. But, so a lot of people have seen this story, although I didn't see it on regular news. But I saw it on Jimmy Kimmel that, somebody who would donate, say, $880 to Trump. That's what they plan on donating. That's all they plan on donating. But it was made into a recurring donation so that it actually charged them $6,600. And again, in this time of pandemic, it was, at the end of the campaign, as the campaign's wrapping up and Joe Biden was out fundraising Trump, this is what he did. And he did it not just to steal it for fun. He did it because he needed the money, or he didn't have the money. He needed the money. So while now, if he's stolen almost $7,000 from somebody who meant to pay $880,000, if he's made these recurring payments, so whatever it was, could go up to maybe 10 times as much, because it was started off as maybe a monthly recurring payment, and then as the race got tighter, he changed it into a weekly recurring payment, and did that and let people know in some type of email or something with a whole lot of all caps text, 9 lines, I think Jimmy Kimmel said, of all caps text before any type of, cryptic information about we're now charging you weekly for something we never even told you we were charging you monthly for. Now, they've given the money back. So the money has been returned to people that they basically stole from people. I mean, if someone overcharges you or charges you 10 times for something you did once, they've stolen from you, right? So Trump stole all this money. He did steal all this money from his supporters. He gave it back, but he did steal it. And for months, he had stolen their money. And who knows how many of this is, thousands and millions of people. So supposedly. But so who knows how many of them, lost their house or lost, had significant problems for money that they wasn't expecting to be missing, stolen from them by Trump. Now, if the money's been given back to them, great. Hopefully they all got their money back. Because as bad as you feel towards people who helped Trump do all this terrible stuff to our country and our world, you still feel bad for them. And you even feel bad for Trump being like a pawn of Putin, but not really. You really want something to happen to him. So it's a nice thing for instance, Joe Biden to pay for people's funerals, but it's kind of like a Band-Aid on this open, festering sore when Trump's still running around and the Trump terrorists are still running around. So it's nice, and it's still kind of insulting when the other part hasn't been fixed. Like, it's that strange thing in American politics where you have one president do really terrible things and then the next president do not as terrible things or not as blatantly terrible things, but not do nearly enough good things to counterbalance. We haven't had an anti-fascist president. We've had lots of fascist presidents and centrist presidents. We haven't had a good anti-fascist president in my lifetime, unless Jimmy Carter was. which I think maybe he was in some degree, but I don't know because I was a kid. Anyway, my point is that that's what we need. That's what everybody's crying out to Bernie for. That's what everybody knows we need, and we can explain that better to everyone else. So thank you for watching this video. But for Trump to take all this money and then give it back, Jimmy Kimmel was pointing it out as an interest-free loan. My question is, where's the money coming from? Because it's not like Trump was waiting for a check. Or if he was waiting for a check, that check's going to be signed Vladimir Putin. So it's like the fact that Trump can pay these millions of dollars back that he needed then, where did that money come from for him to pay it back? And it seems like there's going to be some campaign finance laws broken, left and right, 1,000,000 times, stealing these people's money, / however he got the money to pay them back. So that can be good news. I think I've seen some things about, some more cases, some more suits coming against Trump. For instance, even Capitol Police officers suing Trump for inciting the riot that caused their trauma of having one of their compatriots killed and going through that experience of being attacked by the citizens / Russian agents. Don't hear really enough stories about these Russian agents getting rounded up. I mean, sometimes you hear about them, but then you hear about some of them, or you see some of them posting on YouTube. Jaden X, John Sullivan, who's like, I've got a knife, and encouraging people to charge ahead and saying, we did it, we took the Capitol. And there's a guy he meets, he's like, you told us we would do this, and I didn't believe you, but here we are. So, I mean, obviously orchestrating and planning this attack, taken in by the FBI supposedly, but let back out to broadcast YouTube videos. And last I saw him was just a few days ago talking about an upcoming KKK march all around the country. And he'll say in his video, oh, you control this thing. But I mean, he's the first person I heard about this march from. So it's like, I mean, and of course I saw his thing restreamed on a right-wing thing. So it's like he's advertising this, even though he's a black guy, he's advertising this. And just like he was advertising and orchestrating the Capitol March. And they're either leaving him out there to catch people, which I guess is some FBI trick. Go FBI, good job. But if not, I kind of feel like you need to know which FBI guys are letting these people back out. Because all these trolls on the internet are saying, arrest the FBI. Like I'm in the Earth TV live chat on YouTube. And it's terrible. It's packed with QAnazis and Russian trolls, and it's really, really bad. But they're always talking about, things like arrest the FBI. And it's like, maybe some of them, if they're getting these Trumpers and letting them back out. But I can understand if they're just fishing for more, if they're ultimately rounding them up. Good job, guys. Who am I to tell you your business? I play a cop, in Star Wars. I played the new Cara Dune in some alternate version of Star Wars. I haven't been hired yet, but look for my videos, Cara Dune, new Cara Dune. Anyway, that's the news that comes to mind now, just because it all revolves around this money flow. A great future is when we have no money, because I'm from Oz, which is the future, and I know of Oz from the books by L. Frank Baum that he wrote 100 years ago, but predict a future that could be 5 years from now, 20 years from now. Who knows how long it is away, but the future that we need to reach is no money, no war. Those are one of the characteristics of Oz. The reason why everybody can be happy is because we don't have any money, we don't have any war. And we can get there. We're on our way. This system is ready to change dramatically / it's kind of blowing up. So the whole thing with the employers can't get anybody to work. Well, you're going to have to pay people more to entice them to work. And first of all, people don't need to be trying to or rushing back to work. We already have all the essential workers working. And before I leave you, most important point I have, thanks to Joe for paying for people's funerals. I think it's one of the biggest expenses in American history of a big government program to just pay out this money to people. And it's a nice token. But basically you need a lot more. And what you need is like something that really shows respect and appreciation and a boost to the people. So one idea I've had is $1 million for every essential worker. Everybody who worked through this thing, just give them $1 million. Let them start the economy the way they want to start the economy as a reward for what they did for everybody who got to stay home. I'm grateful to have been able to stay home and receive money, which I like to call the Bernie bucks, because Bernie was the one who was always advocating, pushing for us to get the most for the longest. I appreciate the Bernie bucks, and I appreciate being able to stay home and in this time, and wish more people could, but I'm so grateful to and kind of embarrassed and ashamed um, when these people have done all this stuff in the service industry and delivering and producing food and in the medical profession. And these are all heroes who just give them all $1 million. Um, give them $1 million each. I think that's a good thing, that if we got behind that and we got the type of politician, type of candidate or whatever who would represent that, take that to the floor or whatever, take that to the White House. But do it now. That's a winning rallying cry, I think, because these people deserve our respect and appreciation and deserve to be the ones deciding what economy we rebuild with their purchases and investments and things. So I do feel like we are changing this thing around. I call it the pillow revolution. See my other videos. But we're changing this thing around in a good way, working together in a nonviolent way, in creative new ways to do new things and change this country. And I'm really excited about it. It's the middle of April. It feels like we need to make a lot more changes faster. I feel like one thing only the government can effectively do is prosecute these cops and get more of these cops out of the force and into jail cells or into some type of rehabilitation. Maybe shut down all the jails entirely and turn everything into rehabilitation, to actual rehabilitation, because jail is not. But, and as I said before, it would be unfair if all these terrorist cops and terrorists out of uniform are the first ones to not really have punishments for their actions, because now that there's thousands of them that need to go to jail, everybody all of a sudden sees the light. Well, jail doesn't need to be the way it has been. But it really doesn't. And it would benefit everybody if we changed jail or stopped jails entirely and made a new system. Again, Oz has a beautiful jail. Read The Patchwork Girl of Oz. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but there's a scene in the middle of The Patchwork Girl of Oz where someone goes to jail. And it's different. So it can be different. And just to let you know, the difference is they treat the prisoner well. They say, we believe the prisoner has been twicely wronged. They're hurt because they're fallen out of favor with society because they've broken some type of rule that they don't understand. Because the rules are good in Oz. That's the difference. Is if you only have good rules that aren't protecting certain people, but rules that are for everybody, then it works. So it's too bad that they've broken one of the rules that work for everybody, and too bad that they have to suffer the punishment for it. So we feel bad for this person, and we want to help them. And that type of perspective can help everybody, not just people who've been caught for things, but it can help yourself, before the things come back on you. Like realize, hey, these are things that I probably should feel guilty for, and I should do something to make amends. And I can do that by realizing I've fallen out of something that is a communal thing. And when we get back into it, it's going to be better for everybody. And we're all learning that through coming through this pandemic. And we need to take our time coming through it. But we can do it. And thank you all for everything you do to make that a better experience for everyone around you and for everyone in the world. Money is one of those things. It's like there should just be more of it floating around for everybody. The fact that there isn't, if there was, maybe it'd be a lot more fun. The fact that there isn't, we could kind of do without all of it. And really start thinking about that. One of my best quotes I've ever come up with, Puffin says, what are the last 3 things you would make free? If everything started becoming free, one thing after another, but there had to be 3 things left that weren't free, what would those 3 things be? And it's a hard question because, it's like a koan. It's not supposed to be a question that's supposed to be answered. It's just supposed to make you think. If other things start becoming free, and you still want to charge for a few things, what would those things be? Well, it just becomes senseless to charge for things the more things become free. So being free is a good goal, and we can reach it. And we can reach it for ourselves and our minds, and we can reach it for our lives and our finances and our culture and people's rights and privileges and appreciation in society, because it's natural. It's natural for us all to actually care about each other and take care of each other and not set up a huge complicated system of oppressing certain people. Like, it really is natural. So get into that nature inside yourself. And thank you for watching my video. This has been Antifa News with Puffin, and stay tuned for more. Have a great day.